Can you believe a country can be a travel paradise and still hide secrets that give you chills? Peru isn't just Machu Picchu, it's politics that feels like a nonstop plot twist, shocking counterfeiting stories, and the Nazca lines that keep the UFO debate alive even today. These 15 numbers will flip everything you think you know, from an empire collapsing in a blink to burials that literally place the dead on cliff walls. Watch to the end, and you'll get why Peru is unbelievably beautiful, and way stranger and riskier than you ever expected. Number 1. How chaotic is Peru's politics that it feels like it never ends? If you look at Peru on a map, it looks like it has everything. A coastline, the Andes, the Amazon, natural resources, and a culture with serious weight behind it. But if you look at Peru through its political story over the last few decades, it can feel like binge-watching a show where every season ends with a plot twist. In the early 1990s, Peru hit a double crisis. The economy was dealing with extreme inflation, society was unstable, and violence from armed groups was growing, especially from Sendero Luminoso, also known as the Shining Path. In that moment, Alberto Fujimori, a Japanese Peruvian university professor, stepped into politics and won the presidency in 1990 as a true outsider. In his early years, Fujimori pushed hard economic reforms. Inflation dropped, some indicators stabilized, and security improved after the capture of leader Abimael Guzman in 1992. That is why many Peruvians from that era remember him as the guy who pulled the country back from the edge. But the trade-off was a highly centralized style of rule. In 1992, Fujimori dissolved Congress and governed by decree. Technically, that was a self-coup, and it set a precedent that when a crisis hits, power can be pulled into one tight center. Then came the corruption scandals, especially the bribery videos, and Fujimori left Peru and resigned while he was in Japan. He was later extradited back to Peru and sentenced to a long prison term. The bigger problem is that after Fujimori, Peru did not snap back into stability the way many people hoped. Instead, it started to feel like a political washing machine. From 2016 to 2024, Peru went through multiple presidents, and several left office under investigation, impeachment, or resignation. The deeper reason is not just about who is good or bad, it is about how power is structured between the presidency and Congress, combined with a highly fragmented party system. Picture it like this. A president gets elected, but Congress is split into many small groups. No one is strong enough to lock in stability, and every group has its own agenda. When a president lacks a solid coalition, even a small crisis can quickly turn into a major one. Analysts sometimes call this a governability crisis. It means the country does not lack laws or people. It lacks smooth execution because everything keeps getting pulled back and forth. Pedro Castillo's case makes the outsider trend even clearer. Before winning the presidency in 2021, he was a school teacher and a union leader from Cajamarca, backed strongly by rural voters. But with limited governing experience, he reshuffled his cabinet constantly, and the government started to feel like a beta test that never reached a stable version. At one point, the turnover was so fast that people joked Peru was changing ministers faster than switching apps on a phone. It is funny as a joke, but the consequences were real. Public trust dropped, investment slowed, and protests became easier to ignite. The bottom line is, Peru is not short on potential. What it lacks is a stable political cycle long enough to turn that potential into long-term policy. And until the balance of power and trust in institutions improves, the loop of elections, conflict, replacements, and investigations can keep coming back. Number 2. Was Peru's economy really once compared to the United States? In Peru's modern history, there was a period when the country got rich so fast, people talked about it like Peru had discovered a national gold mine. The twist is that it was not gold or silver that created the boom. It was guano, seabird droppings that built up in thick layers on islands off Peru's Pacific coast. It sounds ridiculous, but in the 1800s, guano was a strategic resource. The reason is simple. The world was pushing agricultural productivity, and industrializing countries needed fertilizer packed with nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium to boost food output. Guano matched that demand perfectly, and it was unusually high quality compared to many other natural fertilizers. For a few decades, Peru exported guano the way countries today export oil. Historical estimates put revenues at hundreds of millions of dollars per year in the value of that era, and at certain points, roughly 70% of Peru's national budget relied on guano. Peru poured money into infrastructure, expanded roads and ports, and spent heavily on its military and navy. So when you hear Peru bought modern warships from abroad, that is not just flexing. It shows the country genuinely believed this income stream would last for a long time. But resources like this come with a fatal problem. They do not regenerate on a schedule that matches political spending. Over-extraction eventually catches up with you. When guano production dropped sharply, Peru's finances crashed with it. An economy built on one revenue source is like riding a bike with one wheel. You can move fast, but when that wheel fails, you wipe out hard. Peru did not just lose income, it also got trapped in loans and spending promises made during the boom years, which made the fall even uglier. By the late 1870s, Peru tried to replace guano with nitrate resources tied to the Atacama Desert region, which mattered a lot to the global fertilizer market at the time. That push created conflicts of interest with Chile and Bolivia and eventually helped ignite the War of the Pacific in 1879. Peru had warships and a significant force, but it lost in a way that confused many observers. Part of it was strategy and logistics, part of it was weak internal unity, and part of it was that the economy was already running out of fuel before the war even started. Some accounts even describe soldiers questioning why they were supposed to die for something that was basically used to fertilize fields. It sounds funny, but it reflects a real mood. The aftermath was brutal. Lima was occupied, the economy collapsed, Peru lost territory, and recovery took years. If you want a quick modern lesson, Peru's guano era is an early version of the resource trap, when a country depends too heavily on one export and does not build a diversified base in time. And the key point is that it was not just an economic story. It was a historical turning point that pushed Peru from a moment of extreme wealth into a long stretch of instability. Number 3. Why do Peruvians give each other underwear like it's a secret signal? In Peru, New Year's Eve comes with a tradition that makes first-time visitors laugh, but the more you think about it, the more it makes cultural sense. People give each other yellow underwear as a good luck gift. The popular belief is that if you wear yellow underwear at the exact moment the year turns, you will attract money and a year that feels bright, literally like the color. So by late December, markets and shops get flooded with yellow underwear in every style and price range. One glance and you know the holiday season has officially arrived. But the real point is not just the color. It is how society turns something private into a public symbol without making everyone awkward. Peruvians often treat it as a funny, affectionate kind of blessing, like friends in many countries giving each other a playful gift to kick off the new year with a laugh. In some places, people also believe red is for love, so they pick red if they want romance in the new year, while yellow is for money. You can think of it as a Latin version of a lucky charm, except this charm lives in your drawer. And if you think Peru is only about quirky traditions like that, here is another curveball. Lima almost never gets real rain. The city is famous for living with fog more than actual downpours. Rainfall is extremely low, so what people call Lima rain is mostly heavy mist and damp air. If you show up wearing a raincoat in the middle of Lima, you will look like someone gearing up for a storm, while locals will just see you as a little too prepared. Another part of Peru that gets misunderstood is how relaxed the culture can be when talking about intimacy. In some areas, adult sex work can be regulated through registration and health checks, and the broader openness connects to older cultural history. The Larco Museum in Lima is a classic example that shocks many people. It is known for a major collection of ancient erotic ceramics from the pre-Columbian era. These pieces are not just there for shock value. They are social evidence, showing how ancient societies thought about the body, fertility, and ritual life. A key detail is that many objects are categorized by ceremonial context, meaning they could be tied to belief systems and social roles, not just adult content for entertainment. And finally, a small but very Peruvian detail. People often use nicknames that sound negative but actually signal closeness. Words like fat, short, or dark might only show up once you are considered part of the inner circle. If you do not understand that, many Western visitors assume Peruvians are rude. In reality, it is a way of shrinking distance, like teasing your close friends in a long-running group chat. So from yellow underwear to mean-sounding nicknames, Peru runs on one shared logic. If they are comfortable with you, they are willing to joke with you. Number 4. The beauty of Peruvian women and why it can confuse outsiders. Peruvian women stand out because Peru itself is a genetic crossroads. You have strong indigenous roots such as Quechua and Aymara, mixed with Spanish influence from the colonial era, and then additional Asian layers from Chinese and Japanese migration in the 1800s. The result is a look that many people recognize as distinctly Peruvian. Think warm tan to honey brown skin tones, thick dark hair, deep brown eyes, and facial features that can feel both soft and sharply defined at the same time. Anthropologists often point to Peru as a clear example of how visible genetic mixing can be across regions in South America. But if we only talk about looks, that is the easy part. What confuses some outsiders is the way many Peruvian women approach attraction and relationships. Peruvian culture places a lot of value on family bonds and long-term commitment. So in many cases, they evaluate a partner through stability and future building, not just a burst of chemistry. A relationship moving toward marriage after 1 or 2 years of dating is not rare, especially in more traditional families. They also tend to observe a partner carefully, but not in an obvious interview way. It is usually the everyday details: how you treat a waiter, how you react when something goes wrong, how you handle money. In many families, whether you show respect toward a mother or sisters can be an unspoken test because it signals how you will treat women later. And once they feel confident, they may be the ones to push the relationship forward. That can surprise some Westerners who expect Latin women to always wait for the man to make the move. Another area that gets misunderstood is openness around intimacy. Peru has playful folk jokes, like the idea that ceviche can heat up romance. There is no scientific proof, of course, but it reflects a culture that can talk about attraction in a more natural, less embarrassed way. In big cities like Lima, dating can also look more modern than in the Andes, because urban life puts more weight on independence, work, and financial stability. There is also a sensitive stereotype that some Peruvian women want to marry Western men mainly for economic reasons. It is true that financial stability is attractive, but that does not mean money is the only focus. Social research often shows that sincerity, respect, and feeling emotionally safe are what actually keep relationships together long-term. In short, the appeal is not just genetics or looks. It is also the mix of practicality, clear standards, and a direct sense of what they want. Number 5. How the biggest empire in Peru's history collapsed, and why the shock still echoes today. Before the Spanish arrived, Peru was the core of the Inca Empire, one of the largest indigenous civilizations in the Americas. Formed in the 1200s and expanded aggressively under Pachacuti, the Inca grew fast. In less than a century, they controlled a massive stretch of the Andes, from the north down toward central Chile, governing tens of millions of people across more than 80 ethnic groups and many languages. What is impressive is how efficiently the empire worked without a writing system like an alphabet. The Inca used quipu, knotted cords, to record numbers, taxes, and inventories. They built layered administration, organized labor through mandatory community service, and created food storage systems across regions. Seen through a modern lens, it was an empire powered by logistics, not only by soldiers. Their road system still feels unreal. The network ran beyond 24,000 kilometers, cutting through deserts, valleys, forests, and snowy mountain passes. Along the routes were rest stops and supply stations, which allowed messengers to run in relay style, pushing information faster than you would expect in a pre-modern world. Sites like the Temple of the Sun in Cusco, where gold carried religious and political symbolism, show the scale of wealth that even European powers would have envied. And then comes the collapse that feels backwards. In 1532, Francisco Pizarro entered Inca territory with a small force. He invited Atahualpa to meet, and Atahualpa believed these strangers could not be a real threat compared with his enormous army. He came to Cajamarca almost unarmed, treating it like a diplomatic ritual. Within about an hour, thousands of Inca soldiers were killed through gunfire, explosions, and pure surprise, triggering panic and a rapid breakdown. Atahualpa was captured. To buy his freedom, he ordered gold and silver gathered from across the empire to fill a large room later remembered as the ransom room. The treasure is described as one of the greatest seizures of precious metals in colonial history, affecting Europe's gold markets for years. But even after paying, Atahualpa was executed. A year later, Cusco fell, the Inca Empire vanished from the map, and Peru entered nearly 300 years of Spanish colonial rule. The real shock is that it was not only land that was lost. The governing structure collapsed too, because once the center was broken, storage systems, transport networks, and authority chains fell like dominoes. That is why a super empire could disappear so quickly it still feels unbelievable. Number 6. Karajia and the strange burial ritual. Yes, the dead really stand guard on a cliff. Imagine walking a mountain path in northern Peru, looking up at a cliff and seeing human-shaped figures standing there in silence, staring down. That is not a trick of the light. At Karajia, near Chachapoyas, there are anthropomorphic coffins placed high on rock ledges, almost like they were assigned to watch over the valley. Many are over 2 meters tall, built from clay mixed with straw, shaped like a human body, with stern faces and oversized heads. Some are painted red and yellow, creating a look that feels both ceremonial and unsettling. What confuses people is how ancient communities got them up there. The location is high, hard to reach, and there is no obvious path. Archaeologists suggest they may have built temporary scaffolding, used plant fiber ropes, and worked with the terrain to move pieces step by step. The goal was not just to bury someone, it was to place the dead in a protected position, away from animals, away from grave robbers, and closer to the sacred world above. The people behind this tradition were the Chachapoya, sometimes called the Cloud People, because they lived in highlands where mist and cloud cover are common. They developed stone architecture and funeral rituals that were quite different from the Inca. Karajia sends a message. Death does not mean disappearance. It becomes a presence in the landscape. In many Andean worldviews, mountains and rocks are not just objects. They are living entities with spirit. So placing the dead on a cliff can be a way of keeping them near the sacred. Another detail that matters is that Karajia is not an easy check-in spot. You have to travel mountain roads, deal with steep sections, and weather can shift quickly. That difficulty accidentally preserves the site, because what is hard to access is harder to disturb. Today, the structures face erosion from wind, rain, and climate change. Preservation teams try to protect what remains without over-restoring, because too much renovation can turn heritage into a staged replica. If you want to understand why Karajia feels haunting, stand still for a moment and imagine an entire community choosing to place their loved ones into a cliff, like leaving a reminder that they are still there, still watching. Number 7. What makes Peru feel more beautiful than you expected, but riskier than you thought? If you think Peru is only Machu Picchu, that is like saying Italy is only pizza. Machu Picchu is the icon, but Peru hits harder because it offers layers. Ancient Inca sites, high-altitude lakes, movie-like deserts, deep valleys, and the Amazon all in one country. Machu Picchu sits deep in the Andes and is famous for stonework so precise it barely needs mortar. The terraces, drainage systems, and the layout of living and ceremonial zones show it was not just a pretty ruin. It was a functioning city. A detail many people miss is that steep terrain and wet conditions are the real enemies, so drainage engineering is one of the reasons it has survived. Step away from the Andes and you reach Lake Titicaca, one of the most famous navigable high-altitude lakes in the world, shared by Peru and Bolivia. It is special because of its floating culture, including islands built from reeds. Locals use reeds for houses, boats, and even the islands themselves, replacing layers on a cycle. On some islands, visitors can stay with local families, and what sticks is not luxury. It is the quiet at night, where you can hear water tapping against the reeds under the floor. If you want a cinematic scene shift, Peru has Huacachina, a natural oasis surrounded by desert dunes. Sandboarding and dune buggies are popular, but the real magic is sunset. The light changes the dunes like a live filter. Another practical detail is that strong winds can affect visibility and sometimes limit buggy rides, because driving in blowing sand is basically driving in fog made of dust. Peru also has the Colca Valley, where you can watch Andean condors glide. Their wingspans are huge, and early morning is best because they ride warm air currents. Colca adds ancient terraces, traditional villages, and hot springs, so you can feel like you are visiting multiple versions of Peru in one day. And if you have time, the Amazon brings river journeys, wildlife, and encounters with indigenous communities. A simple tip is to look beyond the Lima Cusco tourist line. Less famous places can deliver a more genuine sense of discovery instead of a crowd-driven experience. Peru is not one destination. It is a collection of landscapes, and every landscape has its own story. Number 8. Peru's UFO mysteries. Why Nazca keeps people guessing. If you ask where Peru mixes archaeology and UFO talk in the same sentence, the answer is almost always Nazca. On a desert plateau in southern Peru, there are hundreds of giant figures known as the Nazca lines. It is not one drawing. It is a whole system. Long straight lines, geometric shapes, and animals like birds, spiders, monkeys, cats, and even strange human-like forms. The common feature is scale. From the ground, you cannot really see the full picture. To understand it, you need height, either from nearby hills or from the air. The technique is surprisingly simple and surprisingly durable. Ancient people cleared away the darker surface stones to reveal lighter soil underneath, creating strong contrast. Because the climate is dry and winds are often mild, the lines can last for a very long time. Estimates describe a system stretching over 1,000 kilometers and covering dozens of square kilometers. The creation period is usually linked to the Nazca and Paracas cultures, spanning from a few centuries before the Common Era into a few centuries after. The big question is purpose. Some theories say these were ritual paths tied to rain because the region is dry. Others suggest they map water sources or underground channels. Some connect them to astronomy, like lines that align with the sun or stars. But because the designs look best from above, UFO theories keep returning. People ask, if ancient creators could not fly, why make something only fully visible from the sky? Archaeologists push back by explaining that planning tools like stakes and ropes could guide the shapes, and viewing points from surrounding slopes can help check sections as you build. It is like drawing a giant image by working in a grid. Nazca also stays in headlines because of other strange discoveries linked to the area, including controversial stories about unusual mummies. Some claim extraterrestrial proof, others claim staged assembly. The debate continues partly because of inconsistent verification and how findings were presented. What is certain is this: Nazca is one of the rare places on Earth where the landscape and the heritage alone create a feeling that something is beyond everyday understanding. And that is why, whether you believe in UFOs or not, Nazca keeps pulling people back like a riddle with no final answer. Number 9. The Counterfeit Kingdom. Why Peru was once called one of the world's biggest hubs for fake money. If there's one label no country wants, it's being known as a counterfeit capital. But Peru has been mentioned more than once in international reports about counterfeit currency, especially fake US dollars. What makes the story stand out isn't just that counterfeiting exists, it's the level of precision. This isn't some blurry print job meant to trick tourists in a back alley. These are bills that can look real to a normal person and can even slip past busy cashiers if they don't have proper checking tools. So how did Peru end up here? Part of it traces back to history. Peru once had a strong printing and publishing industry, with skilled technicians who knew paper, ink, and high-quality production. When parts of that industry declined, some of those skills got redirected into the underground economy. Criminal groups saw the opportunity and built small but efficient production networks. The techniques can include paper that feels close to the real thing, layered printing, simulated reflective effects, and imitation security features like watermarks and embedded threads. The result is simple. You can hold it in your hand, and it feels legit until someone checks it closely. And these bills don't stay inside Peru. They can move through smuggling routes into different regions, from North America to Europe, traveling inside shipments or through courier-style networks. That's why large crackdowns often involve international cooperation. There have been major raids in Lima where police seized millions in fake currency along with industrial-grade printing equipment. One interesting detail is that these operations aren't always hidden in remote jungle areas. Some counterfeit workshops can sit inside ordinary neighborhoods, looking like a normal print shop from the outside, except the posters being printed are money. This whole counterfeit economy also reveals something bigger. When inequality is high, formal jobs are limited, and technical skills exist in the population. Illegal markets grow fast. Many people involved don't see themselves as global criminals. They see it as a quick way to earn. But the consequences are real. Counterfeit money undermines trust in daily transactions, forces businesses to spend more on verification, and damages a country's reputation. Peruvian authorities have increased cooperation, training, and detection technology over time. But like any underground market, it adapts. Once one method gets exposed, another appears. In other words, it's a constant race between the people making fakes and the people trying to catch them, and neither side can afford to slow down for even a moment. For travelers, the takeaway is practical. Be careful when exchanging cash, use official sources, and double-check large bills whenever possible. Number 10. Helincanava. When the air becomes your enemy every single day. Some places you travel to for fresh air, but in parts of Peru, there are towns where breathing feels like the first challenge. One example is a high-altitude mining settlement where the air is thin, the cold is constant, and the environment is contaminated by heavy metals. In places like this, people aren't just living with basic hardship. They're living inside a long-term experiment created by nature and industry. The soil can contain lead, water can carry mercury, and the air can hold fine dust from mining, blasting, and crushing rock. At elevations above 4,000 meters, the oxygen you actually get is roughly half of what you get at sea level. Your body has to adapt nonstop. New arrivals often deal with headaches, nausea, and a racing heartbeat, but long-term residents face something even worse. It's not just low oxygen, it's low oxygen plus toxic exposure day after day. Add fragile housing, limited heating, little hot water, and weak waste systems, and you start to understand why some of these places get described as cities people survive in, not cities people live in. Gold mining in Peru's highlands often exists in two parallel worlds: formal operations and informal, artisanal mining. In many informal sites, the process is rough but effective. Rock gets broken by drilling, explosives, or air tools. Ore gets crushed. Mercury is used to bind with gold and separate it from the rest. Then the leftover slurry may get processed again with cyanide to squeeze out whatever gold remains before being dumped back into the environment. The exact contamination numbers vary by report, but the pattern is clear. The toxins don't disappear. They spread through soil and water and eventually into human bodies. What makes the story even heavier is the shadow workforce, often women. In some mining zones, groups of women spend long hours searching through waste rock piles for tiny pieces of ore that still contain gold. They work without real protective gear. It's like working in an industrial landfill, except what they're hunting isn't recyclable plastic. It's a few dollars worth of hope. This isn't a romantic story about poverty. It's a direct outcome of a resource economy where profit pulls people into environments the human body was never designed to survive. The health impacts can be severe. Mercury builds up and affects the nervous system, heart, liver, and lungs. Lead exposure is especially dangerous for children because it can damage development. In some artisanal communities, life expectancy has been reported as alarmingly low. The scariest part is that this kind of poisoning doesn't always kill fast. It wears the body down slowly, and by the time symptoms are obvious, the damage can already be deep. So when you hear someone call places like Halincanava hell on a mountain, it's not just drama. It's a description that's painfully close to reality. Number 11. Traveling Peru, don't get careless if you don't want your trip to turn into a nightmare. Peru is an amazing destination, but it's also a place where curiosity needs to come with awareness. The first thing to remember is that tourist-targeted scams are real, especially in busy areas like Lima, Cusco, and around Machu Picchu. Common setups include fake taxis, self-proclaimed guides, or strangers who offer help way too quickly. It can sound friendly, but the goal is often to lead you into overpriced services or get access to your personal info. The easiest way to lower risk is to use trusted ride-hailing apps and check that the license plate matches what's shown in the app. If you take a traditional taxi, agree on the price clearly before you get in. When exchanging money, use official booths or banks. Avoid street exchangers even if they promise a better rate. And when buying something, ask the price before you start handling it, because just holding it can sometimes get treated like a soft yes. Health-wise, Peru has one challenge many visitors underestimate: altitude. Cusco and much of the Andes sit high enough that your body needs time to adjust. Typical symptoms include headaches, fatigue, trouble sleeping, and nausea. Take it slow, drink water, and avoid heavy drinking on day one. Locals often use coca tea or chew coca leaves as a traditional way to ease discomfort, but you should also understand the rules when flying home, because coca products can be restricted in certain countries. A very practical move is to schedule an acclimation day in Cusco. Keep it light, take short walks, and don't stack your first day with steep hikes or intense tours. Street food in Peru can be incredible, but pick places that look clean, are busy with locals, and serve food hot. Avoid sauces that sit out too long, and be careful with seafood if you can't confirm freshness. Pack basic meds like digestive tablets, fever reducers, and hand sanitizer. Bringing electrolyte packets is also smart because if you get drained from altitude or dehydration, electrolytes can help you bounce back faster than plain water. For personal safety, keep valuables low-key and avoid flashing your phone in crowded places. Use a crossbody bag worn in front, preferably with secure zippers. At night, avoid walking alone in quiet areas, especially in big cities. If someone approaches in a way that feels pushy, say no politely but firmly and move toward a crowded space. And finally, Peru comes with cultural differences. Peruvians can tease with nicknames. People can talk to you warmly very fast, and some things may feel more loose than what you're used to in Europe. Don't rush to judge. Stay respectful, ask questions, and always keep a backup plan. If you do 3 things: move slowly, double-check details, and don't trust deals that look too good, you'll experience Peru the right way, not as a warning story. Number 12. How much does it actually cost to live in Peru? The real numbers can surprise you. If you're planning to stay in Peru longer than a few weeks, or you're thinking about living there for a while, understanding the cost of living matters before you land. Peru is generally cheaper than most of Europe and North America, but cheap doesn't automatically mean you'll spend less. It depends on where you live and what kind of lifestyle you choose. In big cities like Lima, rent changes sharply depending on the neighborhood. A 1-bedroom apartment in a central, safer district with good amenities often runs a few $100s a month, and it can be higher if you choose a building with security, a good elevator, or a coastal location. Move farther from the center and prices drop, sometimes close to half. Cusco has a different dynamic because it's tourist-heavy. In peak season, short-term rentals can spike, and long-term renters often have to search early to lock in decent options. Transportation isn't usually the biggest cost. Public options like buses, combis, and small vans are cheap, but they can be crowded and unpredictable. Taxis and ride apps are more convenient, especially at night, but use trusted services to avoid being overcharged. One thing that surprises new arrivals is how improvised traffic can feel in Lima. Honking and aggressive merging are part of the system, so the real cost isn't just money, it's the mental energy you'll spend navigating it. Food is the category you can control most if you're smart. Cooking at home using local markets is often cheaper than supermarkets. Peru also has a strong culture of affordable daily menus. You can get a solid set lunch in local spots for less than tourist restaurants. But if you eat in foreigner-heavy districts, prices jump fast. A practical strategy is to make lunch your main meal and keep dinner lighter, because lunchtime deals are often better value and easier on your stomach. A single person can live comfortably on a few $100s per month depending on city and habits, but people forget hidden costs. Internet, electricity, and water aren't usually extreme, but if your place uses heating or you rely on hot water often, bills rise. Private healthcare can be cheaper than the US, but you still want insurance or an emergency buffer. And don't forget weekend travel costs, because Peru makes it dangerously easy to spend money on quick trips. You tell yourself you'll stay home, and then suddenly you're buying tickets to Ica or Arequipa. Bottom line, Peru can offer a strong quality of life to cost ratio. You don't need to be rich to live well, but you do need to plan for neighborhood differences, tourism seasons, and your own spending habits. If you manage those variables, Peru can feel far more livable than you expected. Number 13. Why Peruvian food is so addictive that people remember it for life. Peruvian cuisine is famous because it doesn't follow one straight line. It's shaped by geography and migration. You have the coast, the Andes, and the Amazon, so ingredients shift dramatically by region. Ceviche is the signature dish, fresh fish cooked in lime juice, mixed with red onion and chili. The magic isn't just the recipe, it's freshness and balance. Too much sour and it feels harsh, not enough heat and it feels flat. One fun detail is that many places serve the leftover ceviche liquid, sometimes jokingly called tiger's milk, and people claim it wakes you up. Honestly, the flavor is so intense it can snap you awake on its own. Then there's cuy, roasted or fried guinea pig, which makes many visitors hesitate. But in Peru, cuy is a long-standing Andean food tied to tradition and daily life. It's seasoned, cooked until the skin is crisp, and usually served with potatoes or corn. You don't have to love it, but you'll understand that what feels weird is mostly about what you didn't grow up eating. Peru also has lomo saltado, stir-fried beef with onions, tomatoes, fries, and soy sauce. This dish is a perfect example of chifa cuisine, the Chinese-Peruvian fusion born from Chinese migration and wok cooking techniques. One bite can feel both Asian and Latin at the same time, and that blend is exactly the point. The Amazon introduces suri, edible larvae rich in energy. It can be eaten raw or grilled, and yes, it's a challenge if you're not used to it. But from a survival perspective, it's a practical protein source. And then there's ají de gallina, shredded chicken in a creamy yellow chili sauce, often served as home-style comfort food. It's the kind of dish that makes you feel taken care of. The bigger idea is that Peruvian food isn't famous just because it has unusual dishes. It's famous because the country has a real regional system of flavors. What you eat in Lima won't taste like Cusco, and Cusco won't taste like the Amazon. So if you try one meal and judge the whole cuisine, it's like judging an entire movie from one scene. That's why many people visit Peru for the ruins, but remember Peru for the flavors. Number 14. Peru's festivals wild, vivid, and sometimes shocking if you're not ready. If you want to see Peru breathe through culture, watch its festivals. Here, festivals aren't just entertainment, they're how communities remember who they are. Inti Raymi, the Festival of the Sun, is one of the most famous. It takes place in Cusco and is tied to Inca tradition. The event is staged as a large reenactment, with processions, royal costumes, symbolic offerings, and a full theatrical retelling of history. It's like a living history lesson except with drums, music, and an atmosphere that feels genuinely ceremonial. Peru also celebrates Marinera, both as a festival and a competitive showcase for the Marinera dance. The dance plays out like choreographed flirtation, using handkerchiefs, footwork, and eye contact. It reflects a blend of indigenous roots and Spanish influence. What's interesting is that it doesn't need a massive stage. The body language is the story. In competitions, people don't only judge technique. They judge attitude, how well you tease, invite, and keep that delicate distance. If you want a festival packed with symbolism, Yawar Fiesta often gets mentioned. It features a dramatic bull and condor image, commonly explained as a symbol of historical conflict and Andean spirit. It's controversial because it involves animals, but it also shows how communities tell the past through symbols instead of speeches. And then there's Kuelap, a major pilgrimage festival in the high mountains. It's a blend of faith, physical endurance, and community identity. Tens of thousands of people walk through cold air and thin oxygen, carrying their own costumes, instruments, and dances depending on their group. One detail many outsiders don't expect is the discipline of the group. You don't go alone. You move in rhythm, you follow the collective, and endurance becomes part of belief. That's why Peru's festivals aren't just things you watch, they're things you learn from. You stand in the crowd and realize some countries don't need museums to keep history alive because history is still happening in the street. Number 15. Peru's most mysterious places, the deeper you look, the stranger it gets. Peru has places that make you feel like you're watching geography and mythology at the same time. One famous example is Chinay Timpishka, the boiling river in the Amazon. In some sections, the water is hot enough to burn you quickly, and at the hottest points it feels like the jungle itself is running a stove. The mystery is that it's not sitting next to a major volcano like you'd expect. Researchers suggest the heat comes from deep groundwater warmed underground, rising through fault systems. Local communities have their own explanation. They see it as a gift and warning from forest spirits. Two different stories, but the same conclusion. Treat it with respect. Another alien-looking, but very real geological mystery is Rainbow Mountain, Vinicunca. Its stripes of red, yellow, green, and purple look painted. In reality, the colors come from different mineral layers. What makes it even more interesting is that it used to be covered in snow and ice, and only became famous after the ice retreated enough to reveal the full colors. So if you visited decades ago, you might have seen a white mountain instead. Another practical detail is altitude. Many people don't struggle because the hike is hard. They struggle because breathing is hard. That's why tours keep telling you to move slowly, almost like you've switched your body into low power mode. Peru also has lesser-known archaeological zones that feel eerie because they sit in places where you wouldn't expect a city at all. Kuelap is a great example. It's a Chachapoya fortress with massive stone walls built on a mountain ridge. It's not as globally famous as Machu Picchu, but it can feel even more secret because it's less crowded and often wrapped in mist. Visitors describe it like a fortress in the clouds because fog rolls through and makes it feel like you've stepped into an unfinished story. What connects Peru's mysterious places is extreme environment. They're often very high, very deep, very remote, or all three at once. That's part of why they survived and part of why they're hard to explain in one simple sentence. You can believe the legends or follow the science, but in Peru, those two things often coexist. They're simply two different ways humans try to name what doesn't feel normal. After all 15 stories, you can see Peru isn't just beautiful for its landscapes. It's thrilling because of the twists in history, politics, mysteries, and the truly unbelievable stuff. If you enjoyed this deep dive style, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss the next episodes. Drop a comment and tell me which number shocked you the most and which country you want us to break down next. See you in the next journey, where every destination has a side most people never talk about.